very top-tier professional wrestlers often draw comparisons to each other. Some might share similar manners of execution and performance, some might mirror each other in their movesets, and some might cut promos similarly or have similar personas. But if you were to ask which professional wrestler is the closest fit to matching Macho Man Randy Savage, we'd be there for a while just thinking about it. That's because there's no real use in trying to find an answer. There has never been, nor will there ever be, a wrestler that quite equals the total package of what made Randy Savage who he was. Savage's greatest matches succeed not just because of any sort of technical skill, which he did have in abundance, but the manner in which his physical blur captivated us. His timing, precision, and steely focus allowed him to assemble masterpieces in a way that were both traditional and unique at the same time. Some of the most famous wrestlers on this planet have had their best matches with Macho Man Randy Savage, and that is no coincidence. Boiling down Savage's near incomparable resume to nothing but the best top 10 matches wasn't easy. This was a hard list to compile, but it's our attempt at doing an extraordinary career some sort of justice. If you want to know what made the Macho Man just as incredible as he was, this is a nice little introduction. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. I'm Jack from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 Macho Man Randy Savage matches that you need to see. Join us. Number 10, Randy Savage vs. Bret Hart, Saturday night's main event, November 28th, 1987. At this time, Bret Hart was one half of the recently dethroned WWF World Tag Team Champions with Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and this match was a chance for Bret to show what he could do in singles action when matched up with one of the company's top stars. While many matches from Saturday night's main event were often a little bit hampered by time constraints, this one made the absolute most of its 12-minute length and was easily one of the best matches in the show's history. Savage and Hart both legitimately injured their lower legs in this match, where the Hitman was coincidentally booked to work over Savage's knees and ankle. It was already hurting him, so I guess that's good in a weird way. Often matches where a technically proficient heel targets a body part are a little bit slow and can be a little bit draining at times, but in this match there is a torrential pace throughout, as Savage and Hart were just made to wrestle together. The fans in Seattle wildly rejoiced in Savage's narrow victory, as it told a simple but effective story, making both men look like valiant competitors. Savage did what he did so many times in his career, throwing the ladder down to elevate his opponent. What a selfless professional wrestler. Number 9, Randy Savage vs. Ted DiBiase, Madison Square Garden, June 25th, 1988. Just how hated was the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in his heyday? Well, let's consider this. In this match, Virgil frequently ran interference by climbing up the steel cage during this WWF Championship bout, and DiBiase was so hated that an irate fan had just had enough by the very end and jumped the guardrail before ascending the cage himself to try and help Savage neutralize Virgil. While we obviously don't encourage fan behavior like that, we admit that moments like this are a telling indicator of just how effective a certain heel and a certain storyline can truly be. Savage and DiBiase were perfect foils for one another in their day, the animalistic and aggressive champion taking on the arrogant and cunning villain. With a packed house of more than 18,000 fans inside MSG, Savage and DiBiase had what might have been their best match against one another, with genuine drama all the way up to a wild finish. For those who say that wrestling was boring in the old days, this match is a perfect counter-argument. Number 8, Randy Savage vs. Jake the Snake Roberts, this Tuesday in Texas. It's not just the match itself that earns entry on this list, but the aftermath as well. Savage and Roberts have been at one another's throats for more than 3 months, with Roberts going so far as to sick his Cobra on a defenseless Macho Man in a truly horrifying moment. Not that Cobra, no, it was an actual snake. That would have been even more horrifying. Oh my goodness. The two finally locked horns in this match on a special Tuesday night pay-per-view, and while it was quite brief, it was not lacking in intensity. Savage won this fast-paced match, but the angle afterwards was something else. A vengeful Roberts spiked Savage with several DDTs before stooping to a new low, striking Miss Elizabeth when she tried to protect her husband from another potential snake attack. Roberts and Savage both cut incredible promos after this, with Roberts at his absolute creepiest. Really, you need to see this promo if you haven't already, and an irate Savage nearly in tears for allowing himself to put his wife in danger. The acting is simply off the charts, as was the heat from the crowd. When even Bobby Heenan is disgusted by the heel's actions, you know you're watching something special. Number 7, Randy Savage vs. The Ultimate Warrior, SummerSlam 1992. This match in question had its work cut out for it, trying to top a particular classic match between the same two opponents. The fact that Savage and Warrior had to try and match the greatness of their previous bout in front of 80,000 excited Londoners at one of the most famous SummerSlams of all time only added to the pressure. But for the most part, these two WWE icons succeeded, coming through with a match well worthy of the WWF Championship. Yes, it may have ended with a groan-worthy count-out finish, but the ending shouldn't take away from a damn good babyface versus babyface confrontation. As we've already said, Savage often got the best out of everybody, and Warrior was a prime example of how that macho magic worked. Warrior was capable of raising his game several times over with the right opponent, and while both Rick Rude and Hulk Hogan did so and led him to some excellent matches, they don't quite touch what Randy Savage could do. Number 6, Randy Savage vs Diamond Dallas Page, Halloween Havoc 1997. This was called a Las Vegas Sudden Death Match, which was honestly just a fancy title for a last man standing bout. Savage and Page had feuded all throughout 1997, with respective seconds Miss Elizabeth and Kimberly both getting heavily involved, and the discontent culminated in this brawl. It was arguably the last great match that Randy Savage would have in his storied career. Really impressive when you remember that he was almost 45 while DDP was 41. Both Savage and DDP were known for meticulously planning their matches down to the most minute of details, so it should come as no surprise that each time they squared off, they put together very precise, very excellent showdowns. While their matches at Spring Stampede and the Great American Bash that year were also both exceptional in their own right, this Halloween Havoc battle was the sort of physical slugfest that their feud had been calling for. DDP has since made it clear how much working with Savage elevated him, and watching this match, you really can understand why. Number 5, Randy Savage vs Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 5. For nearly 10 full years, WrestleMania 5 was the most purchased pay-per-view that WWE had ever produced, bringing in a staggering 767,000 buys. The reason for this monstrous number was unquestionably the main event, pitting a now heel WWF champion Savage against the friend he assaulted in a blind rage just 2 months earlier. The Mega Powers Explode was the most appropriate of subtitles for this feud, as scores of fans tuned in to see the destruction further unfold. Savage played it both aggressive and cowardly at different times in this match, his fine ring generalship on full display. In fact, despite Hogan's dominance of the WrestleMania era so far, Savage was on the offense for most of this match, with Hogan fading deeper and deeper from the continued onslaught of the uncaged champion. It was also one of Hogan's greatest matches ever, which honestly is no surprise. Though their on-camera friendship was tenuous at best, the Hogan-Savage matches of the 80s are all innately entertaining, none better than this WrestleMania headliner. Number 4, Randy Savage vs Jerry Lawler, June 3rd, 1985. The stakes for this one could not have been higher. Savage was defending his Southern Heavyweight title against Lawler at Memphis's Mid-South Coliseum, with no disqualifications and the stipulation that the loser had to leave the territory. Lawler, of course, had the home court advantage. He is Mr. Memphis, with 9,000 strong behind him, but against the unpredictable Savage, anything was possible. The two tore into one another throughout the 30-minute fight to the death, with Savage maiming Lawler to the point where blood began raining down the face of the king. To the crowd's astonishment and panic, the referee attempted to stop the match due to blood loss, which would probably have resulted in a legitimate riot. Like any good babyface, Lawler insisted on continuing, got his wish, and proceeded to pulverize Savage out of Memphis. He did so with one final pile driver, and if you love wrestling that resembles an honest-to-God fight, this will be very much to your liking. Number 3, Randy Savage vs Ric Flair, WrestleMania 8. Talk about a match made in heaven. A babyface who is tightly wound, easily annoyed, and overprotective of his wife against an arrogant heel champion that always brags about his womanizing. Have that heel goad the babyface by claiming to have slept with Miss Elizabeth years earlier and let the macho madness commence. As fun as Flair vs Hogan would have undeniably been at Mania 8, the drama of Flair vs Savage was perhaps even juicier. And there was juice in more ways than one, as Flair bladed himself massively during the course of a truly heated match. Savage and Flair played their respective roles to the hilt, having fans living and dying on every near fall down the stretch. Savage's valiance and perseverance brought the fans inside the Hoosier Dome to their feet, while Flair and Mr. Perfect's dastardly behaviour only maddened them. The post-match chaos only added to a wonderful 25 minutes or so of television, a true WrestleMania classic. Number 2, Randy Savage vs The Ultimate Warrior, WrestleMania 7. What is it with Randy Savage and loser leaves stipulations? His battle with Lawler, as we've mentioned, was a cathartic bloodbath, and while his fight with Warrior saw no shedding of blood, it was still engrossing and intense from start to finish. It's pretty universally considered to be Warrior's best match ever, and it's damn near Savage's best match ever as well. As has been the case throughout this list, the aftermath of the bout only sweetens the overall presentation, and in this case, especially and most famously so. Savage and Warrior did everything they could to polish the other off, with Macho Man resorting to 5 consecutive flying elbow drops, only to learn that Warrior had enough left in the tank to get the shoulder up. Warrior's finishing sequence wasn't enough to polish Savage off either, and trust me, in an era before everybody kicks out of finishes, this was unheard of. Warrior prevailed, but it's the postscript soap opera culminating with a tearful Savage-Elizabeth reunion that is the true WrestleMania moment. It's a match of the year candidate coupled with one of the most iconic images in WWE history. And number 1, Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, WrestleMania 3. Let's not pretend that you were expecting something else. Savage and Steamboat had waged war for more than 4 months, and this was the moment of truth, with Savage's IC belt hanging in the balance. This match was an undisputed game changer, the bout that set the template for WWE main events and other assorted big matches going forwards. Pretty much every single epic you've seen in the decades since this match owe a little something to both Savage and Steamboat. Both men exchanged near falls and aggressive pinfall attempts like rabid animals, maneuvering and counter-maneuvering with speed and fury that was utterly foreign to the slow-moving WWF of the time. The crowd hung on every move, willing Ricky Steamboat to finish the fight while reveling in every Randy Savage misfortune down the stretch. To this day, Savage vs. Steamboat still sits in the pantheon of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever, and that will honestly probably never change. In defeat, it was still Macho Man's finest hour, a truly watershed performance for a one-of-a-kind, never-to-be-duplicated star. So that's our list of the 10 Macho Man Randy Savage matches that you need to see. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to leave any favourites that we've missed off in the comments section down below. My name has been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, at Jack the Jobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic, and check out our Patreon as well, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, to hit subscribe and to join us.